watching Otero Studios.
What's up everybody, welcome to another video. I'm doing things a little bit different this time. Instead of doing the speed drawing and I talk over it, I'm actually going to talk while I'm drawing. So this is going to be a little weird because normally I can pause and edit the video, put some music over it, but I decided it would be kind of cool to do this instead. So today I'm drawing Saitama from One Punch Man. And I apologize, I'm still fighting this cold. I don't know where it came from. I thought I got it from the convention, but as my wife pointed out, I was sniffling before I went to the convention, so it's possible I got this, you know, way before. So as you can see here, it's kind of hard to see on video, but I draw with this blue pencil. I don't do it too much in videos because autofocus. I don't show it too much in the videos because it's really hard to see. This kind of just helps me sketch out the drawing before I do anything else. So right now I'm just trying to get the proportions down. Obviously this fist is in the foreground, and then this is the midground. The background, usually with sketch cards, because of the size of the sketch card, I really can't do a lot with the background. So I'm leaving it kind of bare, and then I'll usually add some color. Usually a contrasting color, so his glove is red and his uniform is yellow. His cape is white, but because we never want to use just plain white, I'm going to leave that, I'm going to do like a gray, a lighter gray. So for the background I'm going to use maybe a light blue, maybe a touch of maybe a teal, something that's opposing the red, because the red is going to take up, you know, 50% of the picture. So now I'm going to get the pencil. So my go-to pencil for sketching, especially on sketch cards, is a 0.5 Graph Gear 1000 pencil. I like this one because it's not as small as the 0.3. But 0.5 is good enough to capture, you know, those lines that you really need, those tight lines. So here we go. I'm going to start sketching. I normally don't do this in the ink stage, but this is where I'll tighten up the blue pencil. So if there's things in the original sketch that I didn't like or just look off, this is where I'll fix it, because once I go to ink, that is more permanent. So we want to get away from, you know, get away from the permanent errors. If there's an error in this stage, I can fix it. Like his eyes seem a little off to me, and his mouth is a little too low, so this is what I'm going to be fixing right now. And again, I am really sorry about my sniffles here. I'm not necessarily sick anymore. But because I have a history with asthma, whenever I do get a cold, it just tends to linger twice as long. So I apologize if it sounds like I'm Tony Montana over here. Some of the younger viewers won't get that reference, but that's okay. So that you see how the eyes are really low here, I'm going to just bring them up just a tad bit. And it also gives that feeling of movement. With his eyes down there, for some reason the image looked very static. Now if you guys don't know the difference between static and movement in a picture, a static picture is a lot like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, where they do posing, whereas movement is something like Dragon Ball or Shonen comic or manga, where it looks like the action is moving. And you can do movement just by changing positions or using perspective. And this is what this picture is doing. It's showing perspective. If you see here, this fist is bigger than that one, so that perspective is gonna give that illusion of movement. It's not something that you really need to show action lines. I mean, you could, especially in One Punch Man. In One Punch Man, you see a lot of movement, or action lines rather. So those action lines give it that feeling of movement, and that's something that I've always struggled with. Because when you're an artist growing up, you like to emulate what you see, and I always read a lot of comics, and not knocking comic books, but the old 90s comics were all about splash pages and your huge pages taken up with one character kind of standing there. So here Saitama's face is starting to take shape. He has a huge head, so leaving that negative space, we're gonna do some neat things with marker for this. Use some reflection, some shading to give it that spherical look, and then finish off the mouth here with little teeth, and then the bottom of the teeth. And just to let you guys know, the Art Sensei will be taking over the channel once a week, and his tutorials are going to be a little bit more in depth. I'll just leave it at that. We spoke after he took over my studio. He's a nice guy, just a little intense. Really likes wrestling. But me, on the other hand, I like to kind of relax, chill. I'm a chill guy, The Art Sensei, on the other hand, is very high-strung. And, what works for him, doesn't work for me. Alright. But as long as you're learning, having fun, that is the point of the channel. I don't want anybody to get frustrated. And if you do get frustrated, that's what the comment section's for. Hey, hey Sal or Art Sensei, whoever you want to talk to. I'm having a lot of issues, drawing hands and feet. And we could dedicate a whole video on that. I want to know what you guys are looking for, guys and gals, because I know there's a lot of female viewers. So I want to know what you guys want, and if you want some tutorials on specific things, we can do that. Because I know I do a lot of drawings on just one or two characters, which I get. Sometimes it can be daunting, like the Mikey video that the Art Sensei put out. That video is a little bit more, not necessarily advanced, but someone's not into digital art, they're not going to know what's going on. So I had to make some shortcuts here. What I mean by shortcuts is the original picture, you can see a little bit of his neck, but because of the space issues with the sketch card, there's certain things I had to omit and actually add on. Saitama actually gets, his head is kind of cut out in the anime here. This is a scene from season 2, which I've only seen little clips of, but I really wanted to draw this image, especially because I have a food truck rodeo coming up in Glens Falls, New York. So if you guys are anywhere near there, definitely come say hi. Let me know if I am blown away by the fact of the people that actually see me at shows and they're like, yeah, watch your channel, which is crazy because you see 1,000 subscribers, you see at the time I had 900, and you don't think people are watching, but you have to remember not a lot of people subscribe, they just watch the videos, so it's kind of cool. I never thought that this would be would take off the way it has. So for the future, I'm having a blast. As long as we're having fun, that's what really matters. Alright, so the third step, which looks like the second step in the speed drawings, but the third step is I'm going to take this liner pen right here, the .05, and just kind of tighten up the lines of the pencil. Then whatever I feel needs broader strokes, then I'm going to use this 0.5 pen here. This is kind of like my express toolkit because a lot of other stuff is packed up. My markers fortunately aren't. So, well, need to get a different pen. This one is Chewed Up. So since I don't have any other 0.05s, excuse me, I'm going to use this Prismacolor one. Now, one thing that you've probably seen in past videos where I do the marker, kind of my top 10 markers, this is the bottom of the list just because the black isn't very saturated the way I like it, and India ink is usually my go-to, and then next is Japanese ink, but this one is India ink, and I'll show you what I mean. You could probably see it in the video. It's not as dark as the Copics, and I feel like the lines, I will say though, the tips feel a lot sturdier on the Prismacolor pens, and that's one thing I would definitely, you know, if I doubt Prismacolor would ever come to me and say, hey, what would you like in a pen? But that's one thing that I would definitely commend them on, is the sturdiness of the pen tip. I am very heavy-handed, and as you know, when we all start in art, we can be very heavy-handed, so having a pen with a sturdy tip is very, very important. So a little trick I want to show you with the ear. So no one's ears, no two people's ears are identical. And I try to convey that when it comes to drawing, you know, anime and comic books. I never draw a character with the same ear. If a certain character has an ear, and that can be daunting too, because sometimes you go back to that character and you're like, oh crap, how did I draw his ear? And then it ends up being that you drew it away, that another character had it. So that's why it's so important, if you're drawing a comic or a cartoon, is to have character sheets. It's like a drawn sheet with your character, so that you know what the attributes are. For example, I have a comic that I'm working on. It's my own comic. It's called Midnight Eye. And I have a character on there that is he is Buddha. And he actually wears these huge Buddha beads, kind of like Akuma from Street Fighter. That's who the influence was for that design choice. And those sometimes I'll draw him and forget to even put him on there, and yeah, so then I'll have to go back and edit it out. And you know, that's the benefit of drawing digitally, is I can always fix those things later, whereas back then comic artists had to use whiteout to fix mistakes. So if you ever find you know, an original art from a comic book from the 80s, 70s, even early 90s, you'll see that a lot of the editing was done with whiteout, and they would white it out, especially with the Comics Authority. So I probably got the years all wrong because I can't look it up right now, but in the 1950s or 60s, they created, or the government created, the Comics Code Authority, and it was like a self-governing thing within the comics industry. And correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but what they did is they went around and they told comic creators what they can and cannot draw. So if there was something inappropriate, because comics before that were pretty much unregulated, and there was some pretty naughty stuff out there, but then it got a little out of hand. They were editing things out of comics like crazy, and you know, I think that's what kind of led to superheroes not really you know, usually putting away the bad guy in jail or something instead of outright killing them. But I mean, it's not good to kill people anyway, so I guess it's a good thing. But with all that censorship, they had to do a lot of fixing, and the way they fixed that was with whiteout. And then it would go to the printer, where then they would color it and all that jazz. There's a lot of really good documentaries about that. One that I own is called the DC Comics History, and it goes all the way back to, you know, the first issue of Detective Comics, Superman, and then it tells you this history of how all these characters came to be. It only goes over DC history, so kind of Marvel's kind of out of the way on that one, but there's plenty of documentaries, especially on YouTube, that you can check out. But you know, that's the fun. I call it fun because history to me is fun. But finding out different things from different time periods and how they changed, how comics have changed so much. Now comics have pretty much been, you know, decensored, and which is funny because now comics are struggling. You know, and, creator-owned comics are now a lot more sought after than the mainstream comics. But if you look at it, it's kind of like YouTube. I feel like YouTube is way more influential now than mainstream media. So, you know, when people go for the news, now they're popping onto YouTube and finding out the news. And I feel like indie comics are kind of the alternative now. You're not getting the same homogenized story that you were getting over and over from Marvel and DC. And not to say that they're not putting out great stuff, but, you know, they're struggling. And that's just also, it has to do with modern tastes. You know, people unfortunately don't want to read comics anymore. They rather, you know, read it on a tablet. They don't want to read a floppy anymore, or they're buying trades. For those who don't know, a trade comic book is a book where they take, you know, 4 to 6 issues and put them into a binded book. So that's a huge difference. But some people, you know, I prefer graphic novels because I used to have, you know, 5 or 6 long boxes of comics. Now I have a nice, neat little book collection on my shelf of graphic novels. The only thing I do buy singles now are comics from people, you know, other artists that I support, like Drawing Blood from Kevin Eastman and Ben Bishop. Sorry if I'm stuttering a little bit. I get really picky with my lines when it comes to inking. And that's part of the reason why when I first started the channel, I was only really doing the speed drawings. I wasn't doing any commentary. I wasn't doing any artist showcase. Because it can be really daunting to just record yourself draw. And the trick with drawing with pen is making sure your first stroke is going to be the one that you're sticking with. Don't do what I'm doing right now. This is called petting the line. And what happens is that when you pet the line, unfortunately you're going to be petting the line with sketch cards just because of how small they are. But you want to make sure that first stroke is the stroke you're going to stick with. So, and it's tough too because I'm not used to the Prismacolor. But you want to make sure, like this eyebrow, as soon as I go down, not to go over again, which I did. But like I said, I'm not used to this pen. But you don't want to stroke or pet the line too much. You want to make sure that first stroke is your only stroke for that particular line. Unless you're going back and kind of broadening the line, like what I'm going to do with the with the 0.5 pen. I'm actually going to go over certain lines, the ones that I want to accentuate and really show focus on. Now, another thing too is you want to take into account that you're going to be using marker. So what I mean by that is, think about drying time. It's going to take a while for this ink to dry. So in that meantime, just remember where you started. And I started with around the head, so that's probably where I'm going to start to color once all my lines are in. And underneath the eye, it's very, so we want to do a very light line. Try not to pet that line at all. You know, just one stroke. Like, do as I say, not as I do, I guess is the term. But this one's a little tricky, especially because I'm doing the sketch card sideways. It's gonna stink for collectability, because when you put it into a card book, some people frame them, but oh no, some people frame the cards. So I can go black here, but since we'll just show the back of the throat black, and I'll color that in. So I'm not really happy with how that line came out, but that's okay. It's a sketch card. You have a little bit of freedom. And now you can kind of put in those action lines if you want to. I'm going to be very conservative when it comes to the lines right now, because remember, we're going to go over with markers, so I'm going to pet this line just a little bit. Alright, so now the basic sketch is ready. Like I said, I'm very foreign to this pen, so you know, some of the things I did I don't normally do. So what I'm going to do with the 0.5 is I'm just going to kind of broaden these lines out, just so it gives it that feeling like a sticker. I don't know how many of you are, you know, familiar with tattoos, but it has the same concept. So with a tattoo, certain tattoos you want to have that sticker look. Unless you're going with photorealism, then fine lines are okay. But when it comes to anime and cartoons, you'll notice that the lines are very broad. Another thing that I want to broaden up here is the glove. So I want to just give it some, not the whole glove, just a couple things here and there that I just want to darken up. Alright, so I feel really happy with that, except some of these finger marks here, the lip, which we can fix later. I might have to use the whiteout technique. So I'm going to let it dry for a second and then we'll start the coloring. Alright, so we let the picture dry off a little bit. Excuse me. And there's still some pencil lines, but now that it's dry, we can take a kneaded eraser. Just don't use a regular, you know, pencil eraser that you would find on your number 2 pencils, and just get those pencil lines out of there. You really don't need them anymore. If you really wanted to keep the pencil lines, what you could do is, before the inking stage, if you have a light box available, you could redraw the lines using a light box. Now what a light box is just a tool, and what it does is it shines a light underneath the original drawing, so that way you can draw, you know, trace it again. But I did see, now that I erased the pencil, is certain parts that I missed. Part of the problems of having a little bit of an issue with seeing with depth perception is that I do miss some lines. But it's okay, you know, mistakes are human. So just fixing those lines. So since it's still wet, we want to stay away from that area. So now what I'm going to do is we're going to put the pens away, and I picked out some skin tones. My preferred skin tone is E00, which is skin white, and E000, which is a lighter one. I can't seem to find it at the moment, so actually I see it now. It's funny how that happens. You don't see it when you're looking for it, but this is the E00. This is pale fruit pink. So you have fruit pink, and then this is the fruit pink, this is the pale. So you could kind of mess around with it, my suggestion is you take another piece of paper and see how the colors are going to blend and work with each other. So this is the pale, and this is the 02. So that kind of works. Not a big fan of it. Because it's anime, you could go this route, and that's entirely up to you. But I am going to do 00 and then E00. So that, that's kind of the fun thing about messing around with markers. So we're going to take the E00, 0, and I'm just going to do a light base. Now there's very different ways of doing it. What I'm going to do for Saitama is, because I do have a white marker, I can always add the highlights later. You could go another route where you kind of miss those areas on purpose. And it all depends on the style that I'm going for. Hyperrealism, which and I'm not that great at. Hyperrealism, skin breaks are good. And that's what I call them. They're skin breaks. It's a tattoo term. But it works for illustration as well. A skin break would necessarily be where, if this area is where you want the reflection, just don't put any marker down. But what I'm going to do is completely saturate the skin with this base color, which is the E00. 0. I'm going to keep doing that. So I feel happy now. There's not much area here to really worry about. You can do double passes. This is where it's okay to pet it, because you don't want to leave any streaks. And like I said, it comes down to the style you're going for. There's some styles where leaving streaks are okay. When I draw my own characters, I like streaks. Just not sure why I do. I just feel like it works really well. Now, with this darker tone, and I have to be careful because I just refilled this one and it has been leaking. So if you refill a marker and it's leaking a little bit, just kind of dry it out a little bit. So I'm going to really go for the area here and shape out where I want that shade to be. And what this does, it kind of gives it depth. So it's not going to no longer look like a regular drawing, but more like a sticker, 3D image, whatever you want to call it. This isn't a court. We don't have to get completely technical. We just want to grow as artists. I feel really happy with that. Maybe go one more pass, because I am going to add one more color to the shade, which is Fleshed R02. And because these earth tones work with pink a lot, and see, it's not dark enough for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch up to a light suntan. Now I have two light suntan markers, and this is why. This one is completely chewed up. So I'm going to switch to the light suntan marker that isn't broken. I can get a little rough when I'm refilling my markers, and when I was refilling that other light suntan, it completely broke. So instead of waiting a couple weeks for my new brush tip to come in the mail, I just went out to Michael's, used the coupon, and grabbed a new marker. So most likely I'll have to rehab that broken one. And when I do, I'm either going to give it to one of my students or just keep it as a spare. I know how expensive these can be, and why not give it to someone who can use it. That's just how I was raised. So his eyes are like a tad bit dark brown, so I'm going to put the flesh color down for the eye for now, and then I'm going to go over it with a dark hazel. So for the glove, I do have prawn, which is like a medium tone between red and pink. Excuse me. So let's see. Oh boy. Oh no. I can't seem to find it. You know, I organized my markers so this wouldn't happen. And it happens. There's nothing you can do about it. You just gotta find it. Alright. So it looks like I lost my light prawn. So what I'm going to do is just use the regular prawn. And we can use the highlight marker to really give it the shininess to the gloves. Sometimes you have to improvise, especially when you can't find your favorite marker. I use reds almost exclusively sometimes, especially because I draw a lot of monsters. So blood and guts and flesh is a really important color to use. Another problem with sketch cards is there's not a lot of real estate, so just so the paper doesn't move on you, I have to hold it down with a finger. It's all good. What I like to do too is when I am drawing these sketch cards, you don't see it in the video, but I like to make voices. Especially because down the line, when I get Midnight Eye completely voiced over, I have the microphone set now to do voiceovers because I want it to sound as clear as possible. You know, I'm a one-man team here, so being able to do different voices is going to be really important for when you make a, you know, motion comic or a cartoon. And animation is one of the things that I've always wanted to do, and I'm actually going to apply again for Nickelodeon. I'm going to be doing storyboarding, but you can learn so much from being in that environment. I've always just done one picture, you know. And his costume is kind of like a mustard yellow, but I want to put a base color down. So for that base color, I'm going to do this really bright yellow. Unless I'm seeing it differently, a lot of you know that I have a partial issue with colors. So what I see is probably completely different from what you see. But now we completely saturated that area. And on video, I'm looking at it now, and man, that looks kind of green. You can let me know in the comments down below if you see green as well. But I have a mustard yellow, but you never want to use the exact color, especially with markers, because you can achieve the same effect with blending colors. But just for this video, I am going to use a mixture of honey and yellow ochre. So let's see how it's going to look on paper. So this is the ochre, and this is the honey. So I'm really digging the ochre. I feel like it matches his costume a lot more. And again, this is not stuff that you normally see in the video. I normally do this when the camera is paused. Let me put the music back on. I need that background music. Music's really calming. So this is where I'm just going to start adding a little bit of. There we go. And then here on the shoulder, his left shoulder, which is my right when I'm drawing. Alright. So I like it so far. And then we can use the honey color, kind of make the shading pop out a little bit. And there we go. And just to bring it all together, I'm going to use cadmium yellow to kind of blend the colors together. And you don't have to get these super expensive markers. I've seen some really cool blending effects with even cheap touch, I think they're called Touch 5 markers off Amazon, or even Michael's own Artist Loft markers. Just make sure you get brush tip, because I do have these that are chisel tip, and they're nice for blocking out areas, but you know, at brush tip you can really get precise with it. So now we have to bring up the values of the fist. You see it's very flat looking. So to do that, I'm going to grab a cadmium red, which is more of a vibrant red, and really start to make this fist look like it's coming out of the paper. And if you wanted to, you can get kind of a diluted red for the back fist, since it's further away. Because anything that's coming at you is going to be sharper, and then anything in the background, mid-ground is slightly blurry. The further away, the blurrier it is. So that's why fine lines are used for something close, whereas, you know, the thicker lines are used for something far away. You want anything close to the reader to be as sharp as possible. It's kind of like how the new iPhones and Samsungs, when they take a picture now, you notice how the background's super blurry, and that's the second camera taking a picture of the background and then blurring it. It's the same concept. I'm gonna just try to keep it uniform, because I'm gonna go in with a dark red, and as you can tell, this one's starting to die on me. I mean, it's a good thing and a bad thing when a marker dies on you. It's good because it shows that you're drawing, you know, you're coloring, you're doing your art. The bad thing is that you got to refill it. Nobody wants to refill their markers. It's an expensive tool. And while we're doing that, I just want to let everybody know that I do have these pieces up for sale. So if you ever see a piece that you're interested in purchasing, just find me on Twitter at Otero Studios, or just leave a comment saying, hey, I'm interested. These sketch cards are $20, and that is includes shipping here in the United States. Anybody international, we just have to calculate the shipping, but it's $20, and you get this nifty little card holder, and you get signed by me. Any other piece on the channel that you are interested in, you can email me at sotero, S as in Sam, Otero 1107 at yahoo.com, and that'll just let me know that you're interested in the piece, and we can set something up. Well, enough self-promotion there. I also have a Patreon, which I was gonna close, but after talking to my patrons, they said that they were completely okay with continuing the Patreon. So I am very grateful for them, and grateful for everybody watching. So I want to thank all of you for supporting the channel. What I do with the Patreon money is I pretty much put it right back into the videos and getting supplies, you know, getting marker paint, getting more ink for the markers, and you know, getting pencils, and I have been slowly upgrading my equipment. You know, I'm not going out getting super expensive equipment. Like I said, I got the microphone set to do the voiceovers, and I got that at a yard sale. So I try to be frugal with the money I get from Patreon, because I want to build the channel up, but I also don't want to go too crazy, and then, you know, then the artwork suffers because, You know, instead of worrying about making new videos, I'm getting more commissions to kind of pat everything down. Alright, so what I'm doing here is I grabbed lipstick red, and basically it's just going to blend out that darker red that I used. And you see I'm getting a lot more detailed the closer I am. This one I'm just going to do little lines because this one's further away. I'm really drilling that home because perspective is something I feel like everybody struggles with. I've been drawing for 30 plus years and I still struggle with perspective. So if you're struggling with something, the best way to fix it is to continue doing it. Doing it correctly. I'll say that. Alright, so for the cape, I'm going to grab a neutral 2. What that means is that there's different types of gray. There's grays that are closer to red, which will be, or closer to the warm side of the spectrum, and those are your W's. And then your C's, which are cool, they're closer to the cool side of the color spectrum. So I'm going to switch to a different one because that one's dying on me. You can tell all the ones that are dying on me. Let's see. So because we have so many warm colors, I'll do C2. So this is the cooler side of the spectrum here. And what that means is that this gray is going to fall under your blues, your greens. So it is a cooler color. You don't necessarily have to do cool, you can do warm grays. But now it kind of pops out a little bit more. And then I'm going to grab C5, which is a big jump from C2. This is just going to kind of just make that cape pop out a little bit more. And then what it does too, it really makes the rest of the piece pop. Because now your eye is driven to the center. You covered this area at the top off. Alright. And we want to get the mouth, but we don't want to make it the center point of the piece. So this is the lipstick marker, but I'm going to use it for his throat. And then we can grab peach for the tongue. And we can leave that alone. If we start to blend it out, you kind of lose everything else. So this is now when we're going to grab that brown. So I'm going to use actual brown and color in the eyes a little bit more. And now it looks a lot more filled in without really filling it in. And I'm going to use C1, which is not necessarily C2 or C5, but what I'm going to do is we're going to blend that cape out. So it kind of softens up those sharp lines I did with the C5 marker. And just to a little there. Awesome. Now, remember what I said in the beginning, where we wanted to do a contrasting color for the background. So this is where I'm going to grab either a blue or a green. I'm leaning more towards blue. So I have this powder blue, and just fill out the outside. Almost like he's flying in the air. And as you guys know, in One Punch Man, Saitama can't fly, he just kind of jumps really high. And in Shonen, a lot of characters really can't fly. Like, in the original Dragon Ball, Goku didn't even fly. He just jumped really high and kind of stayed up in the air. And now I'm going to grab Phthalo Blue. Now I sound like Bob Ross. Phthalo Blue. And we're kind of going to make that background look like it's blurring. It's like a blur effect. So now I'm going to grab Frost Blue. And this is going to be our blender now. So we're going to blend the two colors together. So relaxing. I really enjoy coloring. Because it's an exercise in, you know, seeing how your techniques come together. Now I did notice something when I looked at that is some of the colors just not popping for me in the glove. So I'm going to go in with a different red. And we still got to blend it. And we're going to use the same color that we use as the base, the prawn, to blend it all out. And that red makes it look a lot more vibrant. The lipstick red just wasn't working for me. And you know, you'll notice that when you're doing this type of stuff is, you know, trial and error. Don't feel tied to one thing. If you really want to give it a go, give it a go. So now we're just blending these colors with the prawn. And there we go. That's a tiny mistake. We can use the blender to fix that. And I promise that's not me with flatulence. That is just my creaky computer chair. So we can, the blender smooths that out, kind of gets rid of that mistake. Almost like whiteout. You can actually go over certain areas to kind of blend them out. Alright, so we're almost ready to put the highlights in. So yeah, I feel confident now to put the highlights. So my go-to highlighter is the Uni Posca paint marker. So we're just gonna hit the areas where it really pops, like the top of the cheek, a little bit here, because remember he's coming at you this way. So then we'll put another one here. Anime is fun because, you know, you can kind of go with it whichever way you want. And this is where we didn't leave the skin breaks. So this is where we're going to hit it with a little bit of skin breaks here. And now it's starting to come alive. And we put a little bit here. Just a little bit here. Just a little bit on the corner here. Because there's going to be light sources from different areas. It doesn't necessarily have to be from one area. Just like here in my office, I have one light shining above me. I have one to the left, one to the right. I have different light sources. So if I ever had to make a still life here in the office, I couldn't do that with the lighting that I have here in place. Alright. And then here you can kind of mesh out the details of the glove. Just a little bit there. Just a little bit here. And if you wanted to, you can go down a little here for the knuckle. A little bit more for the knuckle. And then I'm going to have to shift my hand around right there. There, and then here on the bottom of the glove. You'll see it when I move my hand. And then here on the shoulder. And a little bit here. Now it's going to be up to you if you want to do this, but you can take the pen that you did all the detail with and add some action lines. This is a very comic book manga thing to do. Make it look organic. And make sure that it's all coming from the same direction, and this is your center line, so those lines are already kind of screwed up there with the left hand, but that's okay. And there you go. Saitama is almost done. Now what I like to do at the end of the video is I like to do another video or another clip where I'm actually signing it. So that's what I'm going to do right now. Alright, now time for the iconic signature. I'm going to use the 0.5 marker or pen. This is where I normally speed it up or slow it down so you can see it. And there it goes. There's Saitama. I want to thank everybody for watching. Thank you so much for watching, and if you have any questions, if you want to go in depth on one thing or another, please let me know in the comments down below. I would love to take your suggestions and make a video out of it. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed the video, and as always, don't forget to keep it over 9,000. Love you guys.
Get ready for the next battle.